One, A Star Wars Story is a 2016 Star Wars story that we just watched.
Yeah.
It is, if you've been watching these videos with us, I've been taking Brienne through the Star Wars movies, and we've been going in a slightly different order than you typically would expect. We watched episode 4, then we watched episode 5, and then after episode 5, with the big reveal of Darth Vader being Luke's father, we went back and watched the prequel trilogy, right? So we watched episodes 1, 2, 3. After we finished episode 3, I figured I'd show her Rogue One, because that picks up immediately after episode 3, and it leads into episode 4, so it kind of reestablishes you into the original trilogy. Right. And now after this, we're going to go back and finish off the original trilogy with episode 6, before we actually probably watch The Mandalorian, and then go on to the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
So we've been watching this in all crazy sorts of order, but today was Rogue One, and we got some thoughts about it. It might be a little shorter video than normal, because I don't know if we have as many thoughts as the other ones, but we do have a few thoughts. And so, Brienne, what did you think of Rogue One, A Star Wars Story?
It wasn't my favorite out of all of them. For some reason, I didn't like the storyline as much until we got to the end. Probably like the second half, I was like, okay, this is like picking up. But the beginning felt really slow to me. Well, the first half of it felt kind of slow. And the story, I think I just couldn't get into it. But
tell me, do you think that any of this was influenced by the fact that you were falling asleep throughout the majority of the first half of the movie?
Maybe so. I got 4 hours of sleep last night, okay? So...
And I will clarify that prior to us watching this movie, I was like, hey, Brienne, maybe you should take a nap because you're tired and you're probably going to fall asleep in the movie. She's like, I'm not going to fall asleep in the movie. I'm not going to fall asleep.
Well, I wasn't tired.
She fell asleep like 3 or 4 times throughout the first half, and I was like, Brienne, you're like, I'm awake. And I was like, yeah, sure, so. But the movie did pick up, and I'll admit, so I'm teasing you and stuff a lot here, but I will also admit that this movie, I think, was better in my mind going into it.
Yeah.
Whenever I first saw it in theaters, I really liked it, and I've only seen it once before. A lot of these other movies I've seen multiple times. Mm-hmm. This one I had only seen once before. I saw it in theaters back in 2016, so like 5 years ago. Right. And in my head, I remember this being a lot better of a movie. Yeah. But I think it was just because it was a new Star Wars movie. And I think it got a lot of praise at the time, and it is a decent movie. It just isn't as much of a Star Wars film. It is a Star Wars story. Yeah. It's set in the same universe, but it's a lot different, right? That's why it is like a side quest. It is more of a... It's more of a war movie, we've talked about that, how different Star Wars episodes are more heavy emphasis on the war aspect of things. Mm-hmm. This one is literally a war story, and it's telling the story about how they obviously got the Death Star plans and brought them back, delivered them to the rebels, and it basically sets up episode 4 really well. But I will agree with you that this movie, not my favorite. It wasn't amazing. Because even I wasn't falling asleep in the movie, but I also was getting slightly bored at different aspects. But it was an interesting story to tell, and so I'm glad they did it. But it seems like it honestly could have been like a 30-minute or hour-long special. Just like here's how they got the Death Star plans, like a short thing or something. But
they kind of dragged it out a little bit.
Yeah,
that's okay.
But basically what we're going to do, we're just going to do the same thing we've been doing with these videos. We're just going to do favorite character, favorite scene, and then I'm going to give you a theological analysis because I like including stuff like that. This is, most of my followers on this channel are Christians or people who are at least interested in talking about Christianity. And so I like to do a little theological analysis at the end to talk about how we can, how our Christian faith can interact with culture and stuff like that. So let's start off with favorite character. Who is your favorite character in this movie? Sorry, I forgot the name for this.
That's okay. You're good. Favorite character is Baze.
Baze. Yes, I believe so. We looked it up. It's Baze something.
He was funny. It was between him and...
Baze Malbus.
It was between him and then the droid.
K2SO?
Yeah, him. It was between them two. But I think I'll go with Baze.
Why Baze?
He was just a cool character. He was very accurate with the shots, too.
He was
cool. He was super chill, but also... very skilled at the same time, and he has funny moments too.
If he hadn't died, spoiler alert, everybody dies at the end of this film.
Yeah,
basically.
It's kind of sad.
Yeah, but if he hadn't died, maybe the Empire could have recruited him, and he could have taught the stormtroopers how to aim.
Oh,
that would have been good for them.
That would have been.
That was a big mistake.
He was spot on every time. He was.
Yeah, maybe if they focused less on developing this Death Star and more on just teaching their stormtroopers how to aim, they'd probably be a lot more successful. Yeah. Because the amount of stormtroopers they have, they probably could really just conquer everybody if they just knew how to aim. But instead, they're just terrible at aiming, and so, they could learn a lot from Baze. My favorite character would probably be, I forgot. Oh, Darth Vader.
Oh.
Yeah, I was gonna go with Chirrut Imwe, which is that's the guy played by Donnie Yen. Sorry, I'm just like blanking out stuff. Now I'm the tired one over here. She got her naps in throughout the movie. Now I need my nap. But Donnie Yen basically plays Chirrut Imwe, and I'm going to talk about him in the Theological Analysis. But I personally really like Donnie Yen. If you've ever seen him in the Ip Man movies, big fan of those. Ip Man was the guy who taught Bruce Lee how to do martial arts, and so they made movies about him, and Donnie Yen played that character, and so I like it because I used to do martial arts and stuff. But I ended up having to give my favorite character spot to Darth Vader purely because of the scene at the very end of the movie, which, spoiler alert, might be mentioned in a few minutes when we talk about favorite scenes. But Darth Vader, I mean, this is probably my favorite movie featuring Darth Vader, even though he's barely in it. But he's just so cool in this movie.
He's always cool.
Yeah, but it's like in this one, it's hard because I'm going to talk about the scene again in a second, but in the scene, whenever he comes out with his lightsaber and stuff, he just wrecks house. Oh, yeah. And it is kind of funny if you watch this movie and then go watch A New Hope, because I'm pretty sure when I watched this for the first time, I went home and watched A New Hope afterwards. And it's funny just watching the difference in Darth Vader's skill, because he goes from being like, "Argh!" and then like you see him fighting Obi-Wan, and it's just like, man. It's a lot more simple, just because obviously you have movies made decades apart. But yeah, so there's favorite characters, and now favorite scene. As you can tell, we're going through this a lot quicker than the other ones. The other ones have been like 40 minutes long. We don't have as much to say about this one, I don't think. Just it's a movie that exists, and it's interesting.
And we have to make a review for it because we've made a review for all the others. So
for consistency.
Yeah.
But the episode, like whenever we do the actual episodes, we're going a little bit more in depth and we're talking about the plot and stuff like that. This one, the plot, you basically know it, right? They needed to get the Death Star plans. That's the whole movie. Basically, every main character was doomed from the beginning because we don't know about any of them. We just know that somebody got the plans, and so we knew they had to die. I guess you might not have thought of that, but whenever I saw it in theaters, I was like, okay, these people are going to die. And so the plot's very simple. There's not really a lot to work through there. And so we're keeping this a little bit short, a lot more concise. A lot of you will probably be grateful for that because I typically tend to ramble like I'm doing right now. So, favorite scene.
Well, my favorite scene was going to be the last scene, which was the Darth Vader one. But now that you said that, I feel like I kind of need to pick a different one.
Okay.
But originally, that was my favorite scene coming into the video. That's what I was going to pick. Is whenever Darth Vader comes out, he just does the lightsaber. It was cool. Yeah. But if I have to pick a different scene, so that way I can be different, I would say the other Darth Vader scene, whenever he's in the tank and then he starts to drain, and then he like walks out. It was cool. I don't know why. Like, I didn't really expect him to be in this movie, just because I don't know. It's not like one of the like main ones, and I knew it was just like a side movie, and I was like, I doubt Darth Vader will be in here. Like,
it's funny because I was even asking you, like during the scene, I was like, do you know who that is? You're like, no. Until he finally walked out in the suit, you're like, oh.
Yeah, I didn't.
He's in this?
I didn't think that Darth Vader would be in this movie.
Yeah.
But I liked that scene. If it's not the last scene, that's like my number one. But to be different, I'll do the other Darth Vader scene.
I feel like that is kind of sad though. It probably tells you about this movie. The fact that our two favorite scenes are the ones that reference the original, like the actual episodes. I was like, those are the best ones. There are cool things that I also want to mention. The CGI in this movie is actually pretty well done. We have Grand Moff Tarkin. I don't know what his name is. Something Tarkin. That dude, he shows up in this, and obviously that actor is deceased, and so the fact they had him in here, that's cool. And then Carrie Fisher shows up as Princess Leia. I believe she had already passed away at this point. If not, she passed away shortly afterwards. I don't know. But she shows up at the very end of this movie because, like I said, it sets up A New Hope. The last word in this movie is hope. Like, they have received these new plans and it gives them hope. So it sets it up. But the CGI is really well done. It's actually pretty cool. I thought that was neat. And so, like, you probably wouldn't have known that the first guy was CGI unless I told you.
No.
Right? Yeah.
I didn't know. So they did really well.
Did you remember that character from the original one? Or
I mean, I don't remember the storyline with him, but I remember his face.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but that scene with Darth Vader's pretty cool. With, you know, where he chokes out the guy and says, "Don't choke on your own aspirations." Of course, we have Darth Vader saying little pun there.
Yeah.
I thought that was entertaining. I think I laughed out loud when I saw that in theaters. So that was fun. But then, obviously, my favorite scene, it's the one that, you know, I have to choose it.
Yeah.
I can't not choose it because it's the best scene of the whole movie. And it's the scene at the very end, after everybody's dead. Well, really, honestly, I think from the moment the Death Star starts shooting, like, the whatever planet they're on, starts blowing up that town there, or that city center, you know.
Area.
Once that starts going off, I think I like the rest of the movie. Like, that's all my favorite scene.
Yeah.
Because...
That's whenever I even said it. I was like, oh, now it's picking up. Like,
yeah.
This is the good part.
Yeah, because it gets, like, very, like, you know, sad and somber, and you have, you know, Jyn Erso and Cassian, like, hugging each other as they just kind of accept the fact they're going to die, and Cassian says, your dad would be so proud of you, and they just hold each other as that happens, and then the rebels are, like, escaping, and then Darth Vader's like, we're going to dispatch a ship, and then they catch up with them, and then, you know, everybody's running, they're like, oh, we got the plans, and they're running to try to hand it off, but the door's stuck.
Yeah.
And then everybody turns around.
Like, oh, no.
And, man, I think another reason why this is so good is because I remember seeing this in theaters.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience just now, but it was so much better in theaters.
I bet so.
Because it's just like you're in a dark room, and everybody, like, and, you know, it just gets, like, super quiet. And you hear, and then, like, the lightsaber just comes on, and you're thinking, oh boy, it's about to go down. And then this is literally, it's the best scene we've ever had with Darth Vader, because you just see him, like, unhinged, like how powerful he is, because you don't see that in episodes 1 through 3. You get to see him on his way there, right? You have Anakin growing up, and by the time you get to episode 3, he's like, I've become more powerful than you could have ever expected. And then next time you see him is episode 4, and that was made so long ago that the effects are kind of just like, eh. Like, they try to justify it and say, oh, well, they were using a different fighting style, and it was more like samurai, which is like, that works. But really, it was just because it was older, and, you know, they weren't doing as elaborate stuff. Right? So this episode right here is like, that's why I wanted to show this to you before we went to episode 6. Because it reestablishes how much of a threat Darth Vader is. And it kind of reminds you and brings you back up to date. So when we get to episode 6, you'll be like, okay. Because that's the lasting memory you have here. Darth Vader shows up. He's like, he's just like slicing everybody.
Yeah.
And it's very intense. Because you know that the rebels have to get the plans, right? You know where it's going. But literally, they're like, they've gone through this whole movie, like, trying to get these things. And Darth Vader's about to get them. And finally, the guy has to sacrifice himself, just sticks his hand through the door and says, take them. And he has to die just to give off the plans. And so it adds all this extra weight to episode 4. Whenever Leia's going, she puts them to R2-D2 and says, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. And it adds all this weight because you realize what people went through to get this. And it's kind of cool. This whole movie was built off a throwaway line in episode 4 where it's like, oh yeah, like, the squadron went and got the plans, and a lot of people died for it. But this whole movie's built off of that.
Right.
And it's really cool, and it just adds the weight to all this. And another reason they did this movie is because it kind of explains a plot hole from the original one. Whenever you watch the original movie, you're kind of wondering, why would they put this, like, you create this elaborate Death Star, why would you create it so that the entire thing explodes if you shoot one laser through this little hole?
Yeah.
Like, you're like, that seems kind of like a stupid design choice. Why would you do that? Don't do that. Well, in this movie, it explains that the guy who was designing the Death Star was being forced to do that, and so he intentionally put that design flaw in there to give hope for the rebels. And so they're like, oh, okay, cool. So once again, it shows the Empire just isn't being very smart. It's not a wise decision to make somebody forcibly design your power weapon, you know, like your chief weapon. And so it kind of fixes that, like, not necessarily a plot hole, because like a plot hole would be like an inconsistency. It's more just like a lingering question, like, man, how stupid is the Empire to do that? And it turns out they're still stupid, but it wasn't the design flaw that's stupid. It was their choice on who designed the Death Star. They should have had somebody else do this, because this guy, you know, he wasn't really allegiant to them. But yeah, that Darth Vader scene, just like, whoa, yeah, it's so cool. And he's just like throwing people around, using the Force, and like oh man,
effort. He doesn't ever stop
so
too.
good.
It's just like a constant pace forward. Like, he doesn't ever.
Well,
stop.
yeah, no, he just keeps moving.
Going.
Yeah, and you even see the look of terror on the guys' like faces, like the rebels, whenever they see him, and they realize, oh man, this is it. But they're gonna go out fighting, and it's like, oh. And he just rips through them, and then, like, they escape, and Darth Vader just stands there and just, like, looks out. Like, you know, like, his cape fluttering in the vacuum of space, which technically, I guess, would not happen. But it makes for a good shot in the movie.
Yeah. It's aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, there wouldn't be wind in space. So.
It happens a lot in the Star Wars movies if you think about it. Like.
Well, now I'm disappointed.
And stuff, yeah.
But it makes it cool. Maybe he's just got like electronic stuff in his cape that makes it naturally flap. It's just like he's like, this would look epic when I'm standing there, and so it just does that. That's my new justification there. He just like had to click it right before he walked out there. And it's like, oh yeah, this looks cool. They're like, Mr. Vader, sir, your cape shouldn't be doing that. He's like, don't mention it, Clyde. Okay, do you have anything else you want to say about this before we got to the theological analysis?
No.
Okay. Like I said, we don't have as much to talk about this. I'm just kind of talking to pad this up a little bit so that we can talk about more stuff. Theological analysis. This one was actually pretty straightforward because we have this guy named Chirrut Imwe, Donnie Yen's character in this movie, who's basically like a monk when it comes to the Force. And we've talked a lot in these past videos how the Force in many ways is comparable to God. Obviously, the Force is an impersonal, sovereign thing in the Star Wars universe, whereas the Christian God is a very personal and intimate creator. And so the Force and God aren't exactly alike. Really, it seems like the Force is more like some weird view. Maybe it's almost like karma, like Buddhist or Hindu. It's more like that. But if we're talking about a theological analysis here, you can compare the Force to God in a way. And throughout the movie, Chirrut Imwe has this chant, he says, and they even call it prayer, where he says, I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. And it's kind of annoying to a lot of the characters, but ultimately it proves to be true, because he gets through a lot of crazy stuff by trusting in the Force. And if you just like break down what he's saying there, obviously you pick up on the idea that it's the Force, but what specifically is he trusting in? He's trusting in the fact that he is one with the Force and the Force is with him. So he is united with the Force and the Force is constantly surrounding him. And it's because of those two factors that he can go through these different situations without fear and with total confidence that he will ultimately overcome. So if we're talking about in the Christian faith, it's our trust in God, right? We've been unified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Right. Therefore, we go throughout life knowing it is no longer us going about this by ourselves, but it's the Spirit of God dwelling inside of us, working through us to live for God. And so, even though terrible things might happen to us on earth, ultimately, we still have victory in Christ Jesus over sin and death, and we get to be with him forever. And so, even at the end of the movie, whenever Chirrut Imwe dies, he he's talking about the Force, and he actually spreads this message to Baze. Yes, I forgot the name. He shares that message with him, and it revitalizes that guy's faith, because they talked about that earlier in the movie, where this guy, he used to believe in the Force, but now he's kind of strayed from that. But then he comes back, and then he's reciting that same thing as he's shooting his blasters, and he ultimately dies while saying that. And so to me, it's very similar to Christ going and sacrificing himself in order that the apostles could go and do the same thing, right? So Jesus spreads this message, the apostles go out and they share the same message and they die for their faith. And so that was kind of the theological analysis I saw there. Because it just seemed pretty straightforward. I remember when I saw this movie for the first time, I actually went and wrote a blog about this. Yeah. And you can check that out at nowletsbehonest.com. It should still be there somewhere. Just scroll down to the bottom, because I'm pretty sure I just started the blog a few weeks earlier. And so it's somewhere there. I don't even know if I still theologically agree with everything I wrote in the blog, because that was 5 years ago. Yeah. And I was young and a child then. I'm still young and a child now. But it's worth a look, and if the theology is not perfect, just be gracious with me. Whatever. But there's my theological analysis. Very straightforward. Just the idea of whenever we're unified with Christ and he is with us throughout life, we can go throughout life trusting in him, and we don't have to live in constant fear. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and self-control and love. 2 Timothy. So go check 2 Timothy out as well. Do you have anything else you wanted to add to the theological analysis there?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, hope is also a central theme in this movie. They say multiple times about how hope is like, a rebellion is rooted in hope. You need hope to get through all this stuff. And then the last word of the movie is hope. And so that's also a theme, biblically speaking. The hope of Christ is literally the narrative of Scripture from Genesis to Revelation. So the hope is promised in Genesis, it is made possible in the Gospels, and it is realized in the book of Revelation. So that's another thing that's kind of cool. So there you go. I don't really have anything else to say about Rogue One.
Yeah.
You either?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for watching this, if you watched it. And if you did, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, do all that fun stuff that benefits the channel. Don't dislike it. Don't do that. That's the gross button that we stay away from as much as possible. But do that stuff. Let us know what you thought about Star Wars Rogue One. Or no, it's not called Star Wars Rogue One. It's called Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Let us know what you thought about that in the comments below. Maybe you liked it more than we did. Maybe you disliked it more than we did.
Yeah.
I thought it was an average movie that was decent, but when compared to the Star Wars movies, I'd say it's better than episodes 1 and 2 of the prequels, in my opinion. I think you like the prequels better. Yeah, you like the prequels better. I think this is better than episodes 1 and 2, but I think it's under episode 3. So I think that's where I'd sandwich it right there. And I think that, honestly, I might enjoy the Star Wars movies in order of their... we might have to rank them at the end after watching all these. But I think I literally might like them in order like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like they just like ascend and getting better. But I would place this one so it'd be like 1, 2, Rogue 1, 3, 4, 5. I don't know. I'll have to think about that a little bit more. But there we have it. Nothing else to say. That means it's time to wrap up. My name is David.
And my name's Brienne.
This has been Now Let's Be Honest About Movies. Be sure to keep a smile on your face. Don't let anybody steal your joy. We will see you later. Have a great day, afternoon, evening, nighttime, whatever time it is when you're watching this.
Yes.
Have a great one. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
So hear me, God, deliver me when sin my heart does seek. For you are mighty and pure and strong, but my flesh is old.